So here's what we're going to do today. We are talking about the paramitas, and there are 6 paramitas, so we're going to go over the first 3 today, and we are going to do practice, contemplation practice, or Vispashyana, after each one. So I'll talk about, and we can discuss each one, and then after the first one, we'll do maybe 10 minutes of contemplation. And these topics of contemplation, I got from, they're from the 7 Points of Mind Training by Atisha. So that is what, when Khenpo Kungo was talking about Lojong, that's where Lojong comes from. And so it's also known as slogan training. And it's a Mahayana practice of, I first learned about it at Shambhala, and they had a set of cards with these slogans written on them, and you would just pick one every day and practice it during the day. But as you see when we get there, they're kind of, they're very dense, they're like poetry, so it gives you a lot to contemplate. So I think that'll be fun. Has everyone done Vipassana? Okay, well then before we do the first one, I'll talk about what it is briefly. So that's the plan for today. So the paramitas are the path of the bodhisattva. So that's the third path, in the third jhana in what Anne's been going over. And so the first 2 jhanas are Hinayana. And that's kind of what Steve's been talking about, the 4 Noble Truths. Though that is what the Hinayana is. And so what the Hinayana works with yourself. So, and the idea is that by contemplating your suffering and understanding your suffering or working with it, that you're able to end suffering. So the Mahayana starts with that point of you working with yourself, and it expands it to you working with yourself and other living beings. So you're developing a relationship. You're learning how to develop a relationship with the world. So not with yourself, and to extend that outward. So that is really what the Mahayana, means that Maha means greater. So it's the greater path. Hinayana is the narrow path, where you're working with your own discipline. Mahayana is the greater path, where you're using your mind to really create a proper relationship, a bodhisattva relationship, an awakened heart relationship with not only yourself, but with all living beings. And it is the second turning of the wheel of Dharma, so it's just exactly what we talked about in the Heart Sutra. And I noticed from the chart that Anne made is that this is really the only vehicle of the Bodhisattva jhana. And the paramita practice, I believe, is the main practice. So paramita, I was going to say something else, which I forgot. So I can't. So paramita, the definition of paramita is transcending worldly views and the views of the Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas, their notions of virtue. So that's where it comes from. That's the foundation. And then it's building onto that foundation. And we all know the word paramita is we've all been introduced to that word from the Heart Sutra, gate gate, paragate, Parasamgate Bodhisvaha. So that means gate is gone, 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 gone beyond, completely gone beyond a bodhisattva. So paramita, they're called the Six Perfections. So they are the qualities that you practice to make a part of yourself so that you can completely go beyond the notion of samsara and nirvana. So even that idea, that Hinayana idea of samsara and nirvana, you're going beyond that. And what's beyond that is development of your own bodhisattva nature, development of your Buddha nature. So it seemed to me it was like creating a pathway between our Buddha nature, which we have inherently. It's a part of who we are, creating a pathway between that and our lives as we live them every day. So we're like bringing this inner seed of enlightenment that we have out. And the paramitas are how we practice that. So the paramitas are qualities. So we are, once we get on the path, oh, and there is a bodhisattva vow that starts the Vispashyana. And Khenpo hasn't done them yet. He did? I do not remember that. I know that he's been teaching this in Germany, and so he did bodhisattva vows with his German students.
He did it at the end of his teachings on the 37 aspects of the bodhisattva.
Oh, yes.
He did it at the end of that.
Wow.
Yeah, with Portland. It's a long time ago.
Wow. And usually when people get bodhisattva names, they have to do with one of the paramitas. And that is your special paramita to practice. So one of the ideas that goes all the way through the paramitas is the idea of emptiness. And I think the best way to think of that emptiness is, well, the way it was translated here is the pacification of all projections. So emptiness really means the pacification of all projections, so that empty of projections. So in our minds, we're constantly creating ideas based on our idea of ourself, our ego, and projecting those ideas outward. So what this is based on is gradually, the Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche calls it simplifying yourself, removing those projections one by one by one. And so that's the view of the Mahayana, that you realize you are empty of projections so that you're just simple and present, and all phenomena and other living beings are also empty of projections. And so this is a path, the discipline of this path is to lead you to that understanding. And that's what Trungpa Rinpoche says, that because of our journey that we're taking, we have a desire for further discipline. We really desire this. We desire how to be with other people and have it be a happy, harmonious relationship. So this is the path that gives you the tools to learn how to do that. And there are 6 paramitas, and they kind of build on each other. the first one is the paramita of generosity, and they all have Sanskrit words, and I also found the Tibetan words for them. I'll tell you all 6, just so you have a view. Does anybody know them? The second one is the perfection of ethics or discipline, sometimes it's called. The third one is the perfection of patience. The fourth is the perfection of joyous effort. The fifth is the perfection of concentration or meditative awareness. And the sixth is the perfection of wisdom. And I just remembered what I was going to say before, is that there is vast amounts of information available about this. Like I think I read too much for to be able to do this easily. But the book, The Way of the Bodhisattva, that spends a chapter on each of these. The Words of My Perfect Teacher, there's a chapter on each one. I Googled it. There's lots of talks about it. So there's, and I don't know if you know about this, but there are transcripts from talks that Chogyam Trungpa gave, and he talks lots about the 6 perfections. So there's truly vast amounts of information, because this is what the Mahayana is all about. So the first perfection is generosity. So, and they do build on each other. So this is where we start. So this is where we have to start. The Sanskrit word is dana, D-A-N-A, and the Tibetan word is jimpa, J-I-N-P-A. So the idea of giving is, if you think, like, when you begin to think about your ego's attachment to giving, there's I mean, what comes up is a sense of duty, you know, that, or a sense that you should be helpful. Or the opposite of that, I think, is stinginess, the idea that you don't really want to help anybody else. So all of those ways, or the idea that you'll give something but you're expecting something back. So these are the ideas that with our ego conceptions that we start out with generosity. So that's where we start, where we want to get to is the idea of giving just for the sake of giving. That because we see that there's somebody with a need or a situation with a need, we respond to it in whatever way we can. And also in that idea of generosity is that we're willing to give anything. So rather than holding on to our selfishness, our fears, that we're also willing to give them up. That it's that generosity of moving along the path and of being willing to give up anything. We just want to hold on to things so that we'll be able to use them to solve the next problem that comes along. And instead, to be more like a bodhisattva is to give that up and just to be a more simple person and just be willing to work with whatever comes up and give to that situation as it comes up. Now, this is with the 3 paramitas that I'm going to talk about today. There are 3 ways of practicing each one, and this is very traditional. So I'm going to tell you the traditional teachings on this. The first one is giving material things. So there, our motivation is what's important. So you would never want to give something to someone with the intention of harm or becoming famous or out of fear of impending poverty. It's also not good to pamper those filled with desire and greed. A bodhisattva is never reluctant to be charitable and never disrespectful or scornful when doing so. So proper generosity is giving whatever one can and doing so with a proper motivation and enthusiasm. The things that are stated as the best objects of our generosity are representatives of the three jewels, so teachers and Buddhist organizations, our parents, and those who are sick and need of protection. And especially towards those who one thinks are rivals or foes. It's also said that it's more beneficial to use your own hands to do your giving yourself rather than give it to somebody else. Give it to your assistant to accomplish. The second form of generosity is giving loving protection to those who are fearful of others, who fear getting sick and dying, and who are afraid of natural catastrophes. So giving the generosity of giving to people who are experiencing fear. And the third form of generosity is giving the priceless gift of Dharma to others, and which does not mean speaking about it to anyone. So it's to those who really want it. You're not just going out and trying to make converts. So that's generosity briefly. Our contemplation for generosity is no giver, no gift, no receiver. So before we start that, does anybody have any thoughts on what that really means?
So in the same teachings as no self, no object, and no action.
Yes. And what do you think that means?
Well, that we're ultimately connected in one sphere. One mandala.
Yes.
And so does that mean none of this is mine, whatever it is, and none of it isn't anything anyhow, and there's nothing to do with it?
Exactly. See, but what both of you said is the absolute truth. Yes. So, and that's what we're getting to. So the relative truth is that we do see ourselves as individuals, and we do see that the other person is receiving something from us, and we are giving something which we assign a value to. So what you're contemplating is a different way of looking at that. That yes, that there's no that you are not. You're not coming from your ego. You're not coming from the way you traditionally think about yourself, but you're just being a simple self, giving something simple to someone who needs it, with not an expectation of a return. You're just being in the present with the act of generosity. So that's where we want to get to with this practice. So contemplation, Vispashyana meditation in Tibetan is called Laktang, and it's really simple. So, and really fun, actually, because it gives your mind something to do other than look at your breath. So something that's more active than looking at your breath. So whereas in shamatha, the object of your focus is your breath. In this meditation, the object of your focus is this saying, no giver, no gift, no receiver. And so you're thinking about it, you're wrapping your mind around it, but you don't want to be thinking discursive thoughts. So if you somehow slip off from thinking whatever profound thoughts you're thinking about that, and then you start to think about lunch or something like that, then you bring yourself back to the object of focus, which is this saying. And then also the instructions that Khenpo always gives us, if you get tired, you can focus on your breath, or you can just be in the vastness of your mind. And so we will do this for 8 minutes. Any questions before we start? Everyone know what you're going to be doing for the next 8 minutes? You don't understand? What do you think you need to understand it? You're going to meditate on this saying, no giver, no gift, no receiver. Just really so the idea of Vipassana is that, like, we have inner wisdom, we have our Buddha nature. And when you contemplate that, I mean, this is what Vipassana is. When you contemplate on something, you're kind of like creating that pathway to your inner wisdom for it to come forth. So you're really just focusing your mind on that. And I know that's a little bit hard to understand because it's so dense. But you're just thinking, what does that mean? What is no giver? Or you could even think, what's it like for me to give? When I give somebody something, what's going on in my mind? Just like thinking about giver, and then the idea of no gift. What do I think about when I'm giving a gift? Do you understand? Okay. All right. Does anyone want to say anything about that?
It's very difficult.
Did you find it difficult?
Well, all of a sudden, there is no me, so I can't say mine. Or, here, take this. Looks like you could use something because you're not there. Or all of those things, and there's nothing to transact. Of course, there is. There's nothing else in Bodhisattva's heart to give, but that's not there either, kind of. But then it's all yours already, so you wouldn't even have to. It isn't you either, so it's really kind of odd stuff.
It is. It is. And we're gonna actually talk about that in patience. Oh, it's not gonna work. Oh boy, I have a sleep foot. Okay, so the next one, the next paramita is called discipline or ethics. And the Sanskrit word is sila, and the Tibetan word is sultram. So in Tibetan, sultram means proper conduct or morality or discipline.
Can you spell that?
Which one?
The Tibetan.
T-S-U-L-T-R-I-M. Sultram. So there is some sense of awareness which brings us to the level of proper appreciation, a proper relationship with the phenomenal world. Simplicity is the nature of discipline. So there's a link between generosity and discipline. Generosity, you're allowing yourselves to give up your sort of exhibitionistic and egotistic idea, and then discipline is just acting in a simple way. Oh, and here's another part of it is you're not looking for signs of improvement. So you're not looking for a high level of happiness, which is going to cause you to have a low level of depression. So it's like your discipline in your mind is like always steering the middle course of not expecting that this is going to bring you a lot of happiness. It's like just working with yourself, who you are and where you are in your journey right now. And there are 3 categories of ethics. The first one is to refrain from negative actions, so to avoid doing what hurts others and that which is selfish, the 10 non-virtuous actions. So do you know what the 10 non-virtuous actions are? I'll bet you do. There's 3 body, 4 speech, and 3 mind. So
Not killing.
not killing. That's the first one.
Lying, stealing,
The next, so these are body, so not stealing. No, that's mind. So we'll get to that.
Not sexual misconduct.
No sexual misconduct.
Taking what's not given.
Yes. So that's the 3 of body. So the 4 of speech are lying. The next one is yes.
Something about not gossiping or not kind of silly, harmful speech, like not gossiping.
That's actually the last one.
Oh, sorry.
So the next one is slander.
Slander.
Avoiding slander, so avoiding saying hurtful things about people, then harsh speech, and then useless speech. Chit chat. And the 3 of mind. Anyone have any ideas?
not to disrespect your masters.
Well, yes. That's the last one. So the first one is covetousness, having that taking attitude in your mind. The second one is ill will. And the third one is misguided beliefs. So I think that comes under that. They're also called primitive beliefs about reality. And it is said that it is helpful to work with a teacher who knows and has experienced the significance of virtue and vice. The second category of ethics is the discipline of training in positive actions and developing virtuous qualities. And part of that is, so it's taking those 10 things to avoid and make the opposite of them be the 10 things to practice. And part of that is developing the idea that you can practice all the time, that your life is filled with opportunities to practice. And when you make this a discipline by really like memorizing those, it helps you to always in your life know what to avoid and know what to practice. And the third category of ethics is acting on behalf of sentient beings. So that's ethics briefly. And our contemplation for this, I put down 2. The first one is all dharmas should be regarded as dreams. And dharmas there means not the dharma, but it means, like the word karma means action, the word dharma means phenomena, anything that's going on in the world. So what do you think that means? All dharmas should be regarded as dreams.
All life.
Yeah. And what does dreams mean?
Not founded or not
Yes, they're projection. Yes, they're not solid. Yes, they happen in your mind. Our response to life happens in our minds. So that's one you could contemplate, or the other one is contemplate the nature of unborn insight. Any idea what that could mean?
I think insight is also being another word for awareness. So in some ways you could look for the beginning of your awareness, which might be difficult to find, or maybe not. Maybe you have to perform the experiment.
Exactly. You got it. And one thing, these actually came from Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, and one thing he says is that it could be as simple as contemplating how your mind works and seeing, so it doesn't have to be as advanced as your insight and awareness. It can just be the everyday action of your mind where you're distracted and you're unhappy and you're whatever we experience in our minds, and to contemplate, like if you try to find where that starts, maybe you couldn't find it, I think is where this leads. So if you go all the way back to the beginning of this lifetime, it's gonna leave you like having to go to another lifetime, which we can't really do. So those are the two contemplations.
For ethics.
Oh, very good question.
Yeah, that's the question.
That's a good question.
More
I
insight to help your ethical behavior, mind be more ethical.
I think you'd have to practice it for one thing, but
Yes.
I think it goes along with the idea that you can practice ethics anytime. Like you can reach into the confusion and suffering and ignorance of your mind and start practicing right now.
And would some kind of success be, that's right, that's wrong, kind of thinking, ethics?
No, I don't think so.
That's not,
I don't think so. I mean, I really do think it's, I mean, like the recommendation to work with a teacher. See, that's kind of our Western idea of right and wrong. I think this idea is more like whatever you do, you're going to experience the consequences of it. And those consequences, karma, you really might not want to experience. So that's why it's good to know what to avoid. It's more like you're on a path, and what are the pitfalls on the path? Well, I mean, for all of us human beings, like for all of our history, this is always true. I had a friend who had actually spent time in prison, and he told me that the guys who murdered once never did it again. Didn't usually do it again. So it's like learning from your experience. I mean, and I think that's, we don't even imagine that about murder, but lying, which is a simple thing to do, but I think we all feel uneasy when we're doing it and ignore that and then do it again. So I mean, murder is an extreme example, but it's like coming to terms with what it creates in you when you go against these ethical principles. And your relationship with other people, because that's what the Mahayana is all about. Like how does that, you know, how, it makes you suffer, it makes you uncomfortable with yourself, not proud of yourself, you know, so how does that affect your life? I mean, that's where this is all more based on experimentation. I mean, you can believe it if you I mean, I was taught to believe the 10 Commandments as a child, and I did. I thought about it, and I really thought that they I really thought that I didn't want to kill anyone. But I think this is, it's probably that as well as coming from the approach of working with your own mind. Okay, so shall we do the meditation? And if you don't want to do it, you can just do shamatha. Oh, we are running out of time, aren't we? So the third paramita is patience. And this one is so, I don't know, it's my bodhisattva name. So I've really found it kind of difficult to wrap my mind around what this really means. So it's wrathlessness, and there's also the idea of being willing to continue on the path, on your journey. So there's 3 ways. Oh, okay, here's something that Trungpa Rinpoche says. Being generous as well as disciplined, we find all kinds of pains coming up in our lives, which are not the result of punishment, but the result of being a good, disciplined person. So when you find those pains coming up, the way to respond to them is with this paramita, patience. So the 3 ways to practice patience are, first, to refrain from hurting those who have caused you grief and pain. So anytime anybody causes you a problem, whether it's with something that they do or something that they say, the practice is to refrain from retaliating, even in your mind. And if you, so if somebody says something that or you're finding somebody just mildly irritating, so not necessarily someone who's actually harmed you, but harmed you because they're irritating you. That's the place to start, because you're not so involved. Whereas if somebody like stole something from you or hit you or something like that, so you start with the smaller things, and you don't let it escalate in your own mind first, and then you don't let it escalate with the other person. So one of the things I read, he said, just say something even if it's not true, like, yeah, that's right. Like just get the...
I'm laughing because I think we call that marriage.
Exactly.
Yeah, some mildly irritating things.
You learned so much from it.
The second type of patience is enduring any suffering we experience without fighting it uselessly or feeling intimidated. So, and I think that's a really good one, because it causes you to recognize that you're suffering, because, a lot of times we just want to ignore it. So it's the 3 poisons. You're not going to push it away. You're not going to draw it to you and like put out the image that you're a martyr, and you're not going to ignore it. So you're going to I have a pain starting in my shoulder and going down through my arm, and it's like, wow, that's really something to deal with. So you just simply and honestly acknowledge that suffering exists, that pain exists, and it's like, it's life. It's not the end of. You can't get your mind all in a web about it, and that helps you to understand that we in this endless samsara, that we've all suffered a lot, so that by being honest and present with your suffering, that's really taking a step. Also, so when, but if you're sick, seek a cure. If you're in trouble with other people, leave so that you're not harmed. So you're not like inviting suffering, you're not inviting harm. Suffering is like, so you don't see any situation where you're suffering in any way as negative. Suffering is like a broom that sweeps away the cause of suffering. So when you understand this, your suffering is diminished. If you don't understand that, your suffering increases. And it could increase a lot.
Say that again, Mary. Suffering is like a broom.
Suffering is like a broom that sweeps away the causes of suffering.
So that's by becoming aware of the suffering that could prevent more suffering?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Or by wanting to retaliate, or which would cause more, or just ignoring it and then something else happens. And then the third type of patience, I think this is something you mentioned, is bearing hardship for the sake of the Dharma. It's important to learn about and recall the qualities of the three jewels so that we are inspired to seek to understand and realize the relative and absolute truths. It is not easy to acknowledge and understand the simultaneity of the two levels of truth, so it is important to practice the patience of not fearing the profound meaning of the Dharma. Pretty good, huh?
This morning especially.
So that's patience. We don't have time to meditate on it. Or do you want to? Do you want to meditate for like 5? What did you say? So funny. Oh, okay, so patience is, and we'll meditate for 5 minutes. How about that? So these contemplations are drive all blames into oneself. Do you understand what that means?
Take the fall.
Take the fall, yeah.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for what I'm thinking, it wouldn't be happening.
Well, kind of. That would be your usual samsaric approach. Drive all blames into oneself. I think it means that that naturally we want to blame something outside of ourselves for whatever we're experiencing. So what this says is to look to yourself as the cause. It's not necessarily what you're thinking. It could be from a past life. I mean, what you're trying to prevent yourself from doing is looking outside for the cause of your suffering. And I think I don't know. See, I think that some of these are like not the greatest English, but some really brilliant people translated them, so we can't really just change them. Yes, whatever you're suffering, you did cause it, but it could have been in a past life. You could be, that's what they say when something really terrible happens to you in this life, that you can look for the cause in a past life. You know, if you're stabbed, if you're shot, if you're in a serious car accident, etc. And then the other one is be grateful to everyone. Is that clear what that means?
Especially Nancy. I heard it in my head too.
Okay, so we'll do, how about 3 minutes on these? And then we'll say the closing prayers.